Daily Mail. Boy 10 kills himself after suffering horrific bullying that saw his classmates mock his glasses and his teeth. So this poor kid, man, 10 years old, getting mercilessly bullied. And, you know, a part of me feels bad at saying this, but I was reading a breakdown of the story, and the kid had been bullied so mercilessly, physical abuse. The emotional stuff I get, that's tough, but physical abuse, that's you got to stop that. That's wrong. The dad said to the school, "What are you doing about it?" And you know, I feel bad saying this because I mean, this dude lost his kid, and that's horrifying. I've seen many things in my day. I watched a video where a father was holding his dying son, and it is a sound that is haunting. It's a horrible thing. But I just think, let this be a moment for people to realize you can't just say to a school, "What are you doing about it?" when your kid is being physically attacked. Something's got to change. Don't be, look, I see this kid who's suffering in school. You've got the social element that there's no escape from. That's the emotional issue for him. His whole peer group, which is his whole world, mocking him, making him feel like garbage, and then he gets physically attacked. And his family's just asking the school, "What are they doing about it?" Well, nothing, clearly. So what does the kid do? The kid doesn't understand what else there is.
Yeah. I have a son who's 10 years old. So this story is really tough, I think, for anybody, obviously. It's sort of unthinkable. It's totally unthinkable that a child would, I can't even wrap my mind around it. And one thing that I think we haven't quite wrapped all of our minds around is the fact that this whole phenomenon of children committing suicide is very new. It's very modern. 100 years ago, this just wasn't happening. And now it happens all the time. And so it is a reason to actually have a conversation about, like, why is this really happening? And I think that, look, from the parents' perspective, I think we can assume that they were doing a lot behind the scenes to work with their child and do everything they can. The problem is that you're sending your kid into this environment in schools. There's only so much you can do. I could see, and I don't send my kid to public school, but let's say that I did, and the child is having all these problems in school. It's like, you can't go to the school with him and walk around with him and defend him from the bullies. You're sort of at the mercy of the school, and you're at the mercy of the administrators, and you're at the mercy of the other kids. And because we were talking about this a little bit off air, but the fundamental problem here is that these kids are going to a school and they're in this peer-oriented environment every single day. And then not only that, they go home, and because of the phones and the internet, they don't leave the peer environment. They don't leave peer culture. So they're in peer culture every single day physically, and then it follows them. It's like this fog that just follows them everywhere. So what that means is that if a kid is rejected socially by his peers for whatever reason, there's nowhere for him to go to escape that. And at least like 30 years ago, if you were bullied in school, at least when you went home, like, you're home now and you're with your family, and those kids can't get you anymore. But now it follows you. And so these kids, they feel like they're rejected by their peers. Everywhere they turn, they're getting reminders of that rejection, and they feel like their life is over because this is their life. This is what defines their life. And so that's kind of how deep the problem goes. I think it is like when we hear about these kinds of cases, we think, well, why is bullying happening? It's a problem with bullying. Well, kids have always been bullied, and bullying is a terrible thing, and we should try to stop it in schools. Kids have always been bullied, and yet they weren't always committing suicide as a response to that. And why is it? Is it because kids are like weaker today? No, it's because of this peer orientation, this peer culture that they are totally immersed in and cannot escape. And I think that's the fundamental problem.
I look at the majority of human history and how children were raised. When the kid was old enough, the dad, who's a carpenter, would say, "Son, grab those nails over here. Come here, I'll show you what I'm doing." The kid would watch. There's not the same formal education in school and institutionalized learning that we have today. So the kids really did grow up with their families, and the kids worked all day. And the dad worked all day, and the mom worked all day, and they worked in different ways. And then at some point, we got the industrialization of human society, where instead of the children, boys and girls growing up with their parents and living on the family, being on a farm, really, for the most part, it turned into public schools that were like factories. Kids worked, but they worked in horrible conditions. And we were like, okay, this is bad. We can't have kids working in these conditions. But the issue now is, I don't blame the parents. Not at all. I think they're victims of a system that makes it impossible for parents to find a way out. The one thing I hear a lot of when I say things like homeschool your kids, try and get back to how humans actually raise their kids to the best of your ability. The way the economy is set up, it's nearly impossible for many parents. They're like, in order to have a roof over our heads and food, we both have to work. We can't afford daycare, so public school is the only viable option. Then our kid is effectively being tortured in this environment, and neither of us can go to the school, like you were saying, Matt, and intervene, can't afford to homeschool, and we don't know how to solve this problem.
And I think that's one of the reasons programs like the Hope Scholarship in West Virginia are really important. Like having the option to say, this school isn't working for my kid, I'm going to pull them. With the Hope Scholarship, you get money to then send to a private school or use to homeschool, like making it so that parents can really be in charge of the educational environment their children are in. Because if one parent can't stay home and homeschooling's a lot of work, then maybe there's a private school in your area. Maybe there is a co-op you can join. Like being able to remove kids from educational situations that aren't working is really important, especially because there is a social component to a lot of suicide trends. I mean, there are studies that talk about suicide pods where schools that experience a suicide might see 2 or 3 more pop up in the next 5 years because there is the idea that like once it is in a student's mind, it makes a student that is potentially at a higher risk already more likely to commit. And I think especially young children are susceptible to suggestion. We see this in public schools all the time when they're suggested ideas about gender, they're suggested ideas about religion, and it's a vulnerable time. And I think the biggest thing we could do to offer parents in this position support is to make it possible for them to remove their student. And in this case, like if your kid's attending public school and you're paying into that tax base, like take the money with you and go somewhere else. I don't think that making it so it's like, well, we as the administrators kind of did nothing and you're kind of stuck. Like this is all we can offer you is enough. I don't think it's good enough, especially for parents like this.
You do private school for your kids? Are they going to like a private Catholic school?
We homeschool.
Oh, okay. Homeschool.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. Well, we had, there are different, when you homeschool, kind of to your point, there are resources available. There are co-ops and that sort of thing that you can do with your kid. And there are many more options now than there ever were before. Homeschooling has become a much more mainstream option for people. Although, as much as I advocate homeschooling, I still understand that it is the reality that some parents just can't do it, and it comes down to the economics of it, the finances of it. And if both parents you need to work in order to keep a roof over your head, then public school might be the only option. And then I would say if you're in that spot, the best thing you can do is make sure that when your kid comes home that he is home now, and that your home is a different place entirely from the school, and take away the phones, take away the internet as much as you possibly can. And it's like, we're home now together, and give them that like oasis away from all the stuff at school. I
think more people need to discover rural living. I was mentioning the viral video earlier from a Gen Z guy saying he can't afford to live, he can't afford to buy a house. What's up? And I'm like, well, you can in West Virginia. You can buy a house for like $70K, a nice one. It's just that you're in a rural area. You're not living in the big city, but a lot of people want to live in these cities. So I think there's a social cultural issue. I saw this interesting map of population density in Ireland, and it used to be in the 1800s completely even, like a couple 100,000 people in every different district or whatever they're called, and now everyone's in Dublin, everyone. And I'm like, well, that hyper concentration is going to strain resources, the environment, the cost of living. People need to be more content with living further away from the cities. I understand then they have the challenge of gas. Gas gets expensive, and that's why it matters.
It's also access to jobs, right? For a lot of people, that if you live in a rural area, it necessitates them working from home.
Which is becoming more accessible, but you're right. You are right. I'm just wondering if, when I see a story like this and I hear about a man and a woman and they're saying we both have to work full-time jobs to support this house, I'm just thinking like, is it possible? I don't know if it's even possible, but assuming it's possible to live like humans did 100 years ago, get a cheap plot of land in the middle of nowhere, build the house work nonstop, get some animals, and be self-sufficient. Is that a possibility today if you wanted to get away from this system and protect your family?
I mean, I think of course it is if that's what you're choosing to prioritize, right? Like if you're saying we both need to work to afford this home in this city and we pick the city because the schools are good, but actually all of our kids are suffering and having a bad time, like maybe you can go back to the drawing board and say, well, if we move over here and pay less, one of us can stay home or one can be home part-time or whatever it is. You know, I think the challenge is you have to decide like what things are must-haves in your life and what are not. Like, is living near the city because your job is there and you need the job to support your family a requirement? Maybe. But is it I'm living in the city because I want to be able to eat at restaurants that are open at midnight?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you give that up when you go to rural life. You have to plan differently. Like, you know, I know people who live, you know, more southern West Virginia and like they have one or two, like a day of the month where they drive to Costco and they buy everything they need and they drive back out to, you know, the woods and cell service is always great. But the decision was this is more in alignment with the values for our family and our financial goals or whatever it is. It's difficult. I think I've always heard this thing that you might be the one to speak to this, that there'll be these debates like which is hardest, going from 2 kids to 3 or 3 kids to 4. But I have this impression that it's actually going from 0 to 1 and deciding that like you're going down this path of raising children. And that is the at the core of your life now, because you can't do some things that you want. And you maybe have to decide, okay, rural life, where this house has more land, but it's farther from whatever luxury we liked in our younger 20s, it is the goal over, you know, being able to, you know, go to this bar down the street.
I kind of think it's like the greatest thing ever. Just imagining having a homestead and waking up, feeding the chickens, chopping some wood, taking care of the cows, just sustaining off your land. And that sounds absolutely amazing.
I have no interest in working with livestock, so that doesn't appeal to me. But it sounds cool for someone. Like, I like the idea. I grew up in a really rural part of Connecticut, and the fact that like we had woods to run through, that was amazing. I would love to replicate that. And it's just, again, you have to decide like, what do you want and when do you decide to go after it?
Yeah, because even if you're not doing the full homestead thing, which I also like, I like the idea of it. I don't know if
Right.
maybe like the second week of waking up.
You want to muck out a stall? No, thank you.
5 a.m. to milk the freaking cows. I don't know how much I'd really love that, but at least being, if you can, in an area where you know, kids in general need space to go run and play. Boys in particular, not that girls don't need it, but at least I've noticed with myself, with our kids, that boys in particular, they just need like space. They're just like brimming with energy, and you can't. And so many of these boys are being contained, and they're being sort of like anesthetized with we'll put them in front of a screen, and because that makes it you know, they're easier to manage that way. And yeah, you can but it's like a numbing effect. It's not an actual outlet that they need. And I know like with my boys, they're just, you know, you let them loose in the woods and they go and they just want to run through the woods all day, and they come home, and that's the childhood I grew up with. And people lament that kind of childhood is gone these days, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, it's also partly because of the stranger danger propaganda, and maybe there's some truth to it that we live in a more dangerous culture than we used to. I was just seeing this PSA that was on TV at like 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And it's supposed to remind parents that, like, hey, the street lights are on. They've been on for a few hours now. You should probably make sure your kids come home. But, like, they didn't worry about those things back then.
I mean, it's worse than that now. When I was a kid, when I'm 7 years old, I go outside. My mom's just like, come back home when the street lights come on. Mm-hmm. And then I ride my bike and I'm gone. And I would ride around the neighborhood. And it's funny, as a little kid, I remember if I got too far from my house, I would start to feel worried. I don't know what the right word is.
Sure.
But I'd be like, oh, I'm probably going a little too far. I'm like, I'm
but that's a good sense for kids to develop, right? Like, okay, maybe it's time to head back to the homestead.
But now there's news reports where like someone got the police called on them because their kid was playing by themselves in the front yard. Mm-hmm. And then the police are like, what's going on? And they yell at the parents. I did want to say one thing. You mentioned your boys like running through the yard. We were hanging out with some family friends over the holidays. And they have a young boy and a girl that are around a similar age. The boy's a little older. And we were talking about modern politics. And they were like, look, we didn't learn nothing about, you know, like the gender stuff. We didn't need to. We had kids. One day, the boy started smashing things. And the girl started trying to protect them from him. And they were like, I don't know what to tell you. It just happened. We didn't teach him to do it.
Yeah, we had a interesting insight into that because we had our first kids were boy and girl twins, and they always had access to the same like toys. They were raised the same way in the same house, and what do you know? Like from a very young age, our daughter is going for the pink stuff and the dolls and brushing hair and stuff like that. The boy never showed any interest in any of that. He's breaking things. He wants trucks. He wants. It is just when you see that play out in real life, and of course the left's answer is, well, you socialize them into it. You were telling your daughter from birth that she must play with dolls. It's like I never had to suggest it. It's a natural instinct with
there was
kids.
a study done they studied like newborn infants less than a day old, and immediately boys start tracking objects in the room. They track like the lights and like anything mechanical, and girls are looking at faces. Like,
wow.
You can't tell me you socialize a 24-hour-old infant to already have a preference. It's just the way their brains work.
I feel like women make people and men make things,
I mean, they're motivated differently. That's why they work
good.
in harmony,
That was good.
Yeah. There was a funny video where this woman's crying and she's like, why won't boys think? And it freezes and the guy goes, they do think. That's why there's a ceiling fan above you because a man invented that. That's why there's a stereo over on the wall because a man invented that. And he's like showing the inventors of it. But my view is like, yeah, guys are good at making things and women are the only ones who can make people. And that's probably why the female babies are tracking faces. They're concerned more with humans. And the sad thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with I'll put it this way. There's a meme online of when a guy takes a photo of something, he takes a photo of something. When a woman takes a photo of something, she takes a picture of herself in front of the thing. And guys laugh about it. And a lot of women feel bad about it. And I'm like, there's nothing to feel bad about. Women care about people. Guys care about things. There's pros and there's cons to that. It's just men and women are complementary.
Yeah, I've always said that's one of the reasons why, the cliche that women gossip, more than men. And I think that they certainly do. But I almost defend it because I say like, well, the reason why women gossip a lot is because they care about what's happening in the lives of people around them. The reason I don't gossip is just because I don't give a damn. Like I don't. So when you try to, you're not going to believe what happened with those two people. Like I don't care. I'm not taking a moral stand against it. I just don't care what's happening with these people. My wife very much cares about like everything that's happening around her and all the people and everything.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.